simply because he blocks a lot of Doug's natural bluffs with Jack 10, 10-9, Jack 9 suited, and on the river, Doug Polk goes all in. Big bluff here from Doug, and yeah, also he's up a lot. I wouldn't have expected such a huge lead after almost 12,000 hands by now. That's of course really hard to catch up with, but we will see. In this hand I want to talk about a bluff by Doug Polk, which I like to a certain degree. I'm not necessarily happy with the sizing, so let's look into it. So Daniel 3-bets, pretty standard sizing to 4K. Doug Polk calls. They're around 150 big blinds deep. Board comes king, queen, 8, and Daniel decides to check. Once he checks, I would expect he has a lot of ace jacks, ace 10s, queen jacks, jacks 10s, very natural checks. And I think Daniel is also really aware of it. So he's probably going to be mixing some traps with his kings, with his queens, perhaps king pocket 8s if he's 3-betting it pre-flop, which I think is probably doing to a certain frequency. I think 8s, 9s is the borderline, the threshold where you want to start flatting more often, but like 9s for sure is going to be 3-betting 100% of the time, and then 8s maybe, yeah, more often 3-betting. So once Daniel check calls, I think his range is now going to be more like, you know, ace jacks, ace 10s, queen jacks, queen 10s, maybe some weak king X like king 9, king 10. Not sure how much is he 3-betting the offsuited combos, but I can imagine king 10 off is probably 3-betting to a certain frequency, and then for sure king jack suited, king 9 suited, yeah. And all these hands want to pot control to a certain degree. And we know that Daniel loves to play also tricky. So yeah, I can also imagine that he still has some sets in his range. But the majority of his combinations are going to be condensed around the king jack, the ace jacks, the ace 10s, jacks and 10s that call ones. And now Doug fires a second barrel, which I would have expected that he would pot bet more often, simply for the reason that he has the better stack to pot ratio on the river, because we see what happens now, that there's going to be 31k in the middle, and yeah, Daniel has around 43 behind, so it's a little bit of an awkward stack to pot ratio. Not for Doug though, he still empties the clip and he goes for an all-in on the 8 of diamonds. The deuce of spades, of course, a blank. Also the 8 is a relative blank, so don't expect that changes a lot. Daniel can still have some 8-9 suiteds. Yeah, 8-9, 10-8 suited perhaps in his 3-betting range as well. And I think he has to check call a pair once again on the turn, simply because that he's not going to have a lot of paired hands on this board. Most of his king X, ace king, king queen, king jack want to put in more money on previous streets, so his check calls are going to be mainly king 10, king 9. This is probably one of the best hands he can have. And then a lot of, yeah, queen jack, queen 10, ace queen. But since there is already this very card out, the queen and the king, he's going to have less paired combos. He's going to have all ace jacks, all ace 10s, and then he still has jacks, 10s, perhaps 9s, maybe some jack 10s. So you see that it's a board where if Daniel starts folding 8x, it becomes a little dicey. So I think he should be calling his 8x once again. Of course, it's queen x, king x, mandatory call on the turn. There's nothing around it, and well, nothing really to talk about. But the 8x definitely debatable. I would expect that he has to call not all x, but at least to a certain degree also defend some of his 8x. Perhaps even 8-7 suited, 8-6 suited, maybe fold the ones that contain a 10 or 9, 10-8 or 9-8 suited, simply because he blocks a lot of Doug's natural bluffs with jack 10, 10-9, jack 9 suited. And on the river, Doug Polk goes all in and Daniel calls with king 10. And I want to analyze this hand a little bit more from Doug's perspective. I like his bluff, but I don't like his sizing. What is he really wrapping? He's not going to be value shoving a queen. He doesn't have 8x. Pocket 8s is also very unlikely. He would very likely 4-bet kings or queens preflop, so he doesn't have sets. So he's essentially shoving king queen. I also don't think he ever has ace king. So he's probably shoving king jack, but like they're splitting, right? He's splitting against any weaker king. So, and then since it's a really big sizing, Daniel might start folding some queen x, right? He needs to defend way less. In fact, he only needs to defend around 40% of his range. Remember, when we bet pot size, our opponent is supposed to defend 50% of his range to deny us immediate profit from our bluffs. So now, since Doug is bluffing 1.5x pot size, somewhere between 40 and 35%, Daniel is required to defend his range. So yeah, any king x is a snap call. In fact, probably if he has something like king 5, it would be much better than king 10, because now with the 10 he blocks a lot of bluffs. Nevertheless, he still has to call king 10. There's still chop opportunities, and Doug is still going to have an insane amount of bluffs. You might wonder, why is he calling the 10 in spades? It's actually an excellent bluff catcher from Daniel's perspective, because Doug is not supposed to be bluffing with a spade hand. So the most natural bluffs would be something like 10-9, Jack-9, not blocking any spades. So Jack-9 hearts, Jack-9 clubs are pretty good candidates to bluff with, simply because Daniel is going to 3-bet a hand like ace-10 spades, ace-jack spades, and when Doug has these in his hand, it's less likely that Daniel has an auto fold, right? Now with 10-9 in spades, if Daniel has ace-jack in spades, he has to fold, or if he has ace-10 in spades. These are the most natural folds in his range. So for that reason, in terms of the suits, I really like his suit selection here for his bluffs. But again, he doesn't have a lot of hands that would justify, and also not so many bluffs. It's like Jack-9, 10-9, suited. Usually when you have a large sizing, you want to be bluffing quite a lot, but the problem is you still need a decent amount of value hands, and I just don't think that this is happening on this board for Doug's range, simply because his best hands are usually just chopping, right? It's essentially king queen as a value shove, and that's pretty much it. And then this one combo of pocket 8s, right? So there are 2 8s out there, so there's one combo left. Pocket deuce is very unlikely. So any king is chopping apart from king queen, and that's pretty much it. So I think the problem is you can't really value shove a hand like king 9 with that sizing, because as we know, Daniel loves to play trappy, and I don't think he's going to be calling any queen. So in order to justify a value bet, you want to have 50% against his calling range. So every second time Doug wants to be ahead if called, but this is just not happening, because Daniel still is going to have some king x, and he's still going to have some traps in his range. He's not going to be calling every queen, and he can still have some 8x. So here Daniel, since Doug is going to be checking down 8x, trying to win on showdown, he's simply going to have a few 8x in his range, right? Like if he has ace-8 suited, he's not going to fold the turn, especially if he has a decent blocker that unblocks his draws. He might have 7-8 suited or 6-8 suited, legitimate bluff 3-bets preflop. He might even be a bit more stubborn with his 9-8 suited or 10-8 suited. So for that reason, I don't really like that all in. I think half pot, just attacking, pocket jacks, pocket 10s, maybe really bad bluff catcher with 8x, or if he has like something like queen jack with a jack in hearts, which is going to block a lot of Doug's bluffs, then you might fold these hands. So, or again, queen 10, where he has the 10 in clubs, when Doug is bluffing 10-9 clubs, jack-9 clubs, all these kind of combos that unblock the flush draws, then Daniel might be folding those. So yeah, I think sizing wise, I would have probably went for half pot, 2/3 pot, and then this also forces Daniel to expand his calling range, because now he has to defend way more. Instead of defending 40%, he has to defend 65% of his range. So now he has to start calling down also some queen X, right? Like ace queen. And then Doug has an easy value bet with his king X. And essentially when I'm in the spot with 10-9, the way I would approach it is I would just try to make him forward these natural folds, right? And you still have some forward equity against queen X. I think Doug was pretty sure that Daniel has a queen and he wanted to go for max forward equity. But I just think in terms of the over range that Daniel is coming to the river with, I am not a big fan of this overbet. I think it's still better than checking. I think it has probably a positive EV in terms of the range that Daniel is coming to the river with, but I think the ideal sizing would be around half pot to 2/3 pot in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. This is how I would play this spot. I hope I considered everything that is important for this hand. If you have a question, let me know in the comments. Again, I haven't looked it up in Pyro. I try to also show you guys how I practice my understanding of poker, how I try to become better, and very often just trying to think, trying to solve hands with what we know. Afterwards, we can still look it up in Pyro, but I might be wrong here and there, of course, as well. But this is also how I study with the best players in the world. Usually, when we talk about hands, we ask ourselves or each other questions. Hey, how would you do that? What sizing would you be using? What kind of hands would you be 3-betting? What kind of hands do you think he's going to be folding? And then we have an interaction where we share each other's understanding of poker, and we encourage ourselves to really think deeply. This is where you start building the new pathways in your brain that help you to understand better poker. But if you just have a spot and you always look it up in Pyro, and then and especially on the YouTube landscape right now, I feel like everyone is just, let's take the sim, let's look it up, and let's try to be smart, and then just teach poker. But it's totally okay to be wrong here and there. Like, poker is so complex, but this will make you such a better poker player, and it will also sharpen your focus in game. You'll be able to recognize spots much faster. You will recognize patterns, something where you'll be able to connect the dots, something where recently, I have studied this spots and now I recognize this and I can apply the knowledge. But when you just look up the results without really putting in the effort yourself and thinking through the spots, it's not really going to help you in the long run. Yes, you might come across as smart in front of your friends or in front of your audience, but it doesn't really help you in the long run. So also this as a takeaway here, you see me doing that a lot. You also see me using Pyro. It's not wrong. Of course, I want to look up what's the underlying core principle of a hand here in GTO Wonderland, but most of the time we want to try to think through the spots ourselves. So I hope this has helped you guys. Let me know what you think about the hand. And yeah, commanding lead so far from Doug. I think he's literally putting on a clinic here. But I hope you guys stay safe, you stay healthy, and I wish you a happy new year in 2021. And I also just recently made a video on the Bencb channel on how you can make consistent progress in whatever you're trying to accomplish. I share my journey from 2020, how I managed to meditate every single day. So if you're looking for some inspiration for the new year, something that you might consider as important for your own goal setting, for your own journey, check it out, Bencb on YouTube. I made also another video about motivation. Those two videos, kind of fit very well into that topic when it comes to goal setting and making consistent progress, something we all struggle with. And I share my tactics that have helped me, or my simple techniques that I'm using to really make consistent progress in whatever I'm trying to accomplish. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and then see you guys next time.